plan. Stewart Trew is standing by. Stewart is an international trade policy researcher with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Stewart, thanks for taking time for CTV on this Friday.
Hi, Todd.
The key takeaways here from what Carney had to say today. Your read.
Well, I think what he's saying, I've flipped through the bill. It's not super long. I think there's a little bit of a mismatch, right, between kind of the hype that we saw from the Prime Minister this morning and what the bill actually achieves. And I don't think that's anything to do with what they hope to achieve in the sense of making goods and services and investment move more freely across borders. I think it has to do with the fact that there's very little, in fact, that the federal government does, right, that actually gets in the way of interprovincial trade. So there was very little that they could announce in this legislation in respect of removing those barriers. There's some stuff around, acknowledgement of, federally regulated sectors, they will acknowledge credentials that have been given out at the provincial level. I'm not sure how many professions that will affect. I don't think it's that many. But overall, there's very few things that the federal government can do, I would say, to actually to ease barriers, other than building infrastructure, as the Prime Minister was also talking about, and the Industry Minister just now.
Your thoughts on sort of how that plays out between one another? They're saying we're going to remove federal barriers. I don't think there are that many, actually, Stewart, as you're kind of alluding to. A lot of this will have to do with whether the provinces agree, you know what, maybe we need to no longer protect our own industries in the interest of the national interest, so to speak.
Yeah, it's possible, and they've been doing that for a while. There's been a lot of conversations, for example, within the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. I think people sometimes forget that we actually have a free trade agreement between the provinces, and then there's conversations there at the regulatory reconciliation table, as they call it, with respect to like trucking regulations, right? Those can be enormously different between provinces. It has to do with different terrains. Some parts of the country are quite a bit different than others. But, they've been working towards a kind of harmonized system for trucking that would potentially make it more likely that goods would move longer distances between one part of the country to the other. But, even there's only so much the provinces can do. It's a big country. Makes much more sense for a lot of businesses to trade with the United States or nearby provinces, not necessarily provinces super far away. Again, I would just put a plug in. If we're going to talk about nation building projects, I mean, getting more rail lines built would be the cheapest and best way to get products further, right? Further distances between provinces.
How confident are you, Stewart, that any of this is going to happen quickly? We know that the House of Commons is rising in a couple of weeks. The Prime Minister has indicated maybe we should stay sitting in Ottawa until we can get this done, but also getting the provinces to get on board. Talk is cheap, as they say.
Yeah, I have a slightly different perspective. I'm not super worried about them doing it quickly or less quickly. I really think that we've exaggerated the extent to which there are like billions and billions of dollars worth of regulatory differences between the provinces. We've had free trade in place for a long time. I prefer them to see them do it carefully, right, and figure out how can we do this so that we're not just leading to a race to the bottom on standards, as has been brought up by a number of labor unions at the provincial level and the federal level, worried about, the safety of certain services that are provided. So, let's do it carefully and really think about where the high costs are, the high cost barriers are, and if it makes sense, and to put some effort there. That's what I'd like to see going forward, and not this big kind of rush and re-announcing things over and over again and hoping that, this time finally the barriers come down.
Two quick things. Number one, the Prime Minister says we have to rush because it's a crisis. Number two, he said something to the effect of, hundreds of billions of dollars being locked up as a result of these barriers that we currently have. Do you say that's perhaps a little overblown?
Yeah, we do. We put a study out a few weeks ago on this, kind of taking apart some of those numbers. We do think they're exaggerated. They're based on a scenario where there is literally no difference at all in any law or regulation in any part of this country on any respect. And that's just unreasonable to expect when the provinces actually have an obligation to govern in many areas under our Constitution, right? If they're not going to do it, no one's going to do it. So it does result in the occasional differences. Most of these differences don't affect trade. And if you look at studies of small businesses, when they say, why don't you trade with other parts of the country, 67% of them often say, well, we have no interest in that, and the biggest barriers are distance and transportation costs. So we do dispute the extent of the problem. We think the numbers have been used to kind of create a sense of crisis. And certainly it's not going to help us respond to the extent of the threat from the United States. Our biggest export market being cut off like that with these tariffs, that is massive. And nothing they can do at the interprovincial level like this is going to get us anywhere close to responding to that level of crisis.
Stewart, thanks for your time today.
Appreciate it, Todd. Thank you.